And a good Tuesday morning to you, Central Georgia. Thanks for tuning in here for a look at your extended forecast. It's a bit of a busy Tuesday, but your forecast should shape up pretty nice for the remainder of the work week and as we head into the weekend. First things first, we did have our fair share of some scattered showers and a couple of storms yesterday. Let's take a look at the rainfall totals across Central Georgia. Some areas farther down to the south and the southeast saw closer to about 2 inches of rain. Parts of southern Lawrence County, parts of Trutland County just to the east of Soperton, just shy of 2 inches right there on the Montgomery and Toombs County line. Closer to an inch in areas like, I believe this is over in western Lawrence County. This point right here just in West Eastman, just shy of 2 inches north of Cochran, 1 inch of rain right on the county line of Houston and Dooley counties. But farther up to the north, not even getting up to an inch of rain for some of those initial storms that did roll through. We did see our fair share of thunderstorms here in the Macon area. In this specific point I grabbed, it didn't record much, maybe only a singular trace of rain. But overall, areas of Bibb County did not see much in the way of rain. Warner Robins only 0.2 of an inch of rain. And then portions of eastern Monroe County, closer to Juliet, had about a ½ inch of rain, 1/10 of an inch up in Milledgeville. And then this isolated spot down here in south and southeast Washington County saw also about 2 inches of rain. So really not that much, but the big thing that you need to know is we didn't record any rain at Middle Georgia Regional Airport. So you see the rainfall totals from yesterday on the almanac. 0.00, sorry, your departure of rain is now dropped below the 2-inch mark. We had a pretty good cushion of nearly 5 inches above where we should be at this point of the year about 3 weeks ago, and it has been a very dry spell since. But in terms of the numbers, we had a very warm morning yesterday morning. In fact, some areas barely dipped below the 80-degree mark. Macon got down to 76 degrees, 95 for a high temperature yesterday, and that's even despite all the cloud cover and all the showers in the early afternoon hours. We still did warm up 1 degree above average. Still a far cry from this record of 106, and along with that record low of 64 back in the 1900s. 1986 was this record. 1910 was the record for the low. Sunrise yesterday at 6:42, so it looks like the sunrise got 1 minute later than it was the previous day, and then sunset got 1 minute earlier than it was the previous day on Sunday. So let's talk about July's 2025 rainfall. Another day without rain at Middle Georgia Regional Airport continues to put us at the very bottom of this graphic right here. If we were to continue to add another category to this, probably substantially dry, whatever adjective that you want to use, but the month of July has been a very dry one in South Bibb County. Only recording 4 days of rain so far in the month of July, and it actually came in a 5-day span right here. But all of those days we really recorded pretty minuscule amounts of rain, so it's only going to total about 0.2 of an inch of rain. Still very far off our average July rainfall and our record rainfall for the month of July back during the flood of '94. But overall, 2025, we are still above average. In fact, that number we were just talking about, just shy of 2 inches above where we should be this time of year, and that's mainly to thanks because of May and June. Look how far above average we were in those 2 months. They were both very, very wet months. March and April weren't that much above average, but we do see a green box right there, and those came after a very dry January and February. But that's not really very dry when you compare it to where we are in July. At this point in July, we are hovering just over 3 inches behind where we should be. We should be closer to about 3.4, 3.5 inches of rain for the month of July as a whole, and we have barely seen anything. Now, this was taken as of yesterday. We have some more rain in the forecast as we go into the evening and nighttime hours tonight. So hopefully we can at least get some form of rain that is going to maybe put a significant dent in that number, maybe put it back up to only about 2 inches below where we should be in terms of average for the month of July. But before we get into the rain chances, today's a bit of a double whammy. We have one last day of this blistering heat, and then we should get some relief in terms of those heat indices and the actual high temperatures. Evening storms will start to pop up into the picture after this afternoon full of blistering heat indices, and then a slight cool down. And once again, cool down is a very relative term this year. Obviously, you're not going to get a cold front that ushers in high temperatures in the 70s this time of year, but we will see a downtick in those high temperatures. So let's take a look at your quad view right now. Plenty of blue sky, barely any cloud cover to be found on any of our sky cams. It is really blue up here in Warner Robins, really blue down here in Dublin, and a few clouds in the picture at the Georgia National Fairgrounds and downtown Macon, but nothing that's going to block any of that sunshine. So your temperatures may be hovering a little bit warmer than we were this time yesterday, which is not what you want to see. Already 89 degrees in Unadilla, 89 degrees in Cordele, just shy of it at 87 degrees in Dublin over to Cochrane. Farther north that you travel, it's more so some mid 80s, but those aren't the numbers that actually matter. But we'll take a look at how we match up with some of our neighbors. The deep south is just warm recently, and this is going to correlate with a lot of heat advisories, even excessive heat warnings across portions of the Mississippi River Valley. 85 in Little Rock, 87 in Jackson, 88 all the way down in the southern end of the Mississippi River in New Orleans. Getting an 88 down in Jacksonville right there, and I believe 88 is the warmest temperature. So the title of warmest temperature goes to Jacksonville and New Orleans on this graphic. But if we were to go extra local, then Unadilla and Cordele would definitely take that title, popping up 89 degrees already. So our dew point temperatures, we thought we had this figured out this morning because Vidalia did pop up a dew point temperature of 74 degrees, but now it looks like that sensor is not working and not responding once again. Vidalia recording a 49-degree dew point, which would be so pleasant this time of year, but you definitely don't see that in central Georgia. Right now, we're just continuing to talk about the dark green shades on the dew point temperatures map, and that's going to enhance the feels like numbers. Well above the triple digits in many areas so far. Feels like 101 in Dublin, 104 in Gordon, 106 in Sandersville, and taking the cake feels like 108 down in Unadilla. That is getting in the neighborhood of roughly almost 20 degrees warmer. Maybe a bit of a sensor issue, maybe overestimating what it feels like, but it's hot nonetheless. It doesn't really matter what your feels like numbers are. Obviously, when you start to see the triple digits, those pink shades, then of course you know it is extra swampy and blistering hot outside. So most of central Georgia is probably feeling like the 90s, a couple degrees warmer than their actual temperatures, and 101 up in Forsyth, so maybe a patchy area of some really good humidity up there. Your winds and wind gusts farther over to the west, that's where we are seeing our gustier winds, even up to 17 miles per hour on occasion over in Taylor County and Butler, but we're not seeing that blue shade very widespread over to the east in central Georgia. So anywhere from maybe about a 9 to 10 or even a 12 or 13 mile per hour steady breeze, that's going to be your sustained number over here on the left in the white. And then that yellow number that does pop up occasionally is going to be your occasional gust that does blow a little bit faster, but that's not necessarily sustained by any means. And take a look at this. Calm in Swainsboro, calm down in Vidalia. Not quite sure if I believe that one. Don't really believe anything that Vidalia has been saying the past 2 days, but calm winds up in Emmanuel County just to the north of Toombs County. So today I did mention a bit of a double whammy because number one, we have this blistering hot afternoon. And then after that afternoon is over, we go into the evening and nighttime hours. We have the potential for maybe some strong, maybe even some severe storms. However, it is looking like a fairly widespread rain chance, which is looking pretty good. Hopefully we can get some of that, at least in southern Bibb County for our numbers' sake. But 98 for a high temperature, and that is just the actual temperature. When you factor in the humidity, let's take a look at what our heat index graphic is peaking at. 108, that's just here in Macon, and typically Macon is not the warmest number that we do see on the feels like temperature map. It makes me pretty confident that we will see our fair share of isolated values that are even above the threshold of what our heat advisory goes for, which is feels like temperatures up to 109. We'll have a couple areas probably pop up some 110s, some 112s, because that's what we saw yesterday, but those aren't necessarily widespread. Feels like temperatures up to 109, somewhere between that 105 to 109 range is what has warranted yet another heat advisory. And you do see that the heat advisory today goes for all of central Georgia. Our western and southwestern counties aren't left out of it like they were yesterday, which is not a bad thing. You want to be left out of these heat advisories by all means, but everyone has the potential today. There was more confidence in the rain chances being farther to the west, but as we saw, they kind of went right through, straight line through central Georgia, and not necessarily as much rain over to the west. So those areas, even though they weren't in a heat advisory, they warmed up the same just about as much as everyone else did. So same time frame as what we've seen yesterday and probably the day before on Sunday. This is our third consecutive day under a heat advisory and going from the noon all the way to the 8 p.m. window, but we're seeing some areas that are already above the 105 mark for the feels like numbers. So of course, that's just kind of a general time frame. We're already feeling the heat here even before the 11 a.m. hour, and we're going to feel the heat all afternoon long. So a quick reminder of what warrants these heat advisories and these excessive heat warnings. Thankfully, we haven't had to talk about this or that, the excessive heat watch, which is just essentially an excessive heat warning that's issued a couple days out ahead of time. But right now, what you need for a heat advisory is, number one, you need good confidence, about 80% confidence. And then the actual air temperature or the feels like temperature has to be to those degrees that we do see. Actual air temperature hasn't even hit 100 degrees so far this year, but the feels like numbers have definitely been running rampant, well above what the actual temperatures read. So you need at least widespread feels like temperatures of 105 plus in order to warrant a heat advisory. And once you get really good confidence in widespread heat indices of 110 plus, that's when your excessive heat warning can get issued. I mentioned a couple isolated areas will probably pop some numbers up that are above that 110 threshold, but it's not going to be necessarily widespread. It's just those super swampy areas like Gordon, like Unadilla, like Sandersville that we always talk about that are running ahead of the rest of the pack. So it's a good reminder in this dangerous heat to continue to take care of yourselves. We'll continue to issue all of those reminders about what you should do on a very, very hot day. Number one, apply and reapply that sunscreen or try to wear some form of protective clothing in order to prevent sunburn. But also with dangerous heat, you can start to get a little bit exhausted really quick. That air really starts to weigh on you. You may start experiencing some symptoms over here to the left, which are going to be symptoms of heat exhaustion. Now, this isn't as severe as the heat illness over here behind me, which is a heat stroke. But if you combat the symptoms here on the left side of the screen, hopefully you won't have to worry about any of the symptoms on the right side of the screen. But if you feel any of these symptoms that are outlined on this graphic, make sure to go ahead and make plans to head indoors. Try to get in some AC, go into a shaded area, go grab yourself a bottle of water and take a break from whatever you're doing. Just make sure that you're hydrating, because dehydration is obviously a main symptom of a lot of these heat illnesses as well. And something that goes hand in hand with both is the nausea and vomiting. But of course, sometimes you can just jump straight over to the right side of your screen with some of the heat-related illness symptoms that you are feeling. So you definitely want to really emphasize that you're trying to keep yourself cool, finding an immediate way to cool down, maybe even getting some ice and trying to pour it over your head, a really cool towel, do anything that you can to take care of yourself in this very hot weather. But also make sure that you're taking care of your furry friends. If it is too hot for you outside, it is too hot for them, and especially on those hard surfaces like concrete and asphalt, because those temperatures that you see 140 and 155, those temperatures are probably going to be warmer, because this is just for air temperatures of 95, and I have a high forecasted of 98 today. So give or take a couple degrees with those. Way too hot. 140 is absolutely absurd already. To see numbers even in excess of that, even in excess of 155 degrees is not going to be good for their paws. Give them some form of insulation, but try to keep them on the grass and limit their time outdoors. It's definitely a day for the dogs and the cats to snuggle up with you, and you just stay inside in the air conditioning and watch some Netflix. Only take them out for the occasional bathroom break. Now let's go to your satellite and radar picture, which is pretty much all clear now. A lot of our cloud cover that we had present this morning has dissipated in nature. We actually did have a couple of sprinkle showers down in our south and southeasternmost counties, but nothing that was really substantial in the way of rainfall. So we were talking about our boundary to the north as of yesterday. We've steadily seen it creep down, at least the eastern side of that boundary. So now it is virtually draped over central Georgia, and that's going to continue to act as an axis of lift throughout today, mainly towards the evening hours. But right now, this boundary is going to be the driver of our weather later on this evening into the nighttime hours, and hopefully going to be the driver of some slightly cooler temperatures, maybe even some slightly drier air as we go into the following days on Wednesday and Thursday. But this is what we call a backdoor front, and I was talking about it this morning. The reason we call it a backdoor front is notice the motion. It's come in from the north and the northeast as opposed from the north and the northwest, where we typically see these fronts coming in from over in the west and the Great Plains over in Texas. So it's kind of acting backwards of what a typical weather system and a typical frontal boundary would do. But what it can do, it can usher in some of that slightly drier air and some slightly cooler air, and that's going to wedge up against the Appalachian Mountains up here to the north and northeast of us. That's going to act as a bit of a blocking mechanism and a guiding tool for some of that cooler and drier air to filter into northeast, east, and parts of northeast central Georgia here. So let's go into future view, talk about the rest of today. This is as of a new model run, so let's kind of see what it has for the rest of the afternoon hours. Still maintaining the idea that it's going to be very hard to find some rain this afternoon. You may get yourself an isolated shower, an isolated sprinkle, but overall, most areas will remain dry, and that makes sense because it is going to be a blistering hot afternoon. That will allow the temperatures to warm up, and even if you catch a light shower or a bit of a steady shower, it's not going to really do much in terms of cooling the temperatures down. It may vary briefly, but then once that sun comes back out, it's going to feel even more humid after a rain shower like that. That's where you're going to start to see a bit of fog coming up off the surface, and that is just that surface moisture showing you how humid it is. Now we go into 8 p.m. A couple of storms popping up into the picture. Once again, the time frame for tonight's active weather still looking like it's going to be past dinner time mainly. But obviously 8 p.m., 9 p.m. could be when many folks are still heading back from any dinner time plans. You're going to want to probably push those plans to a little bit earlier, head out to an earlier dinner so you're already home. Don't have to worry about anything as these storms are popping up. So it looks like they continue to gain organization in that last window of getting any daylight or any of those warm temperatures whatsoever. 9 p.m. the sun will have already set later tonight. We're talking about sunset, and it's somewhere around 8:40 at night as of right now. And it will continue to operate off whatever ingredients we have left. But by the time we get to midnight, we're really looking at those temperatures to cool down. This is not going to have as much to work with as it would, say, if it were to come in at 4, 5, or 6 o'clock in the afternoon, that peak heating window when our temperatures are normally reaching their highest. But it does look like this latest run of Future View is holding on to it a little bit later to around the midnight hour, but it is very quick to fizzle out in light of this. Now we go into tomorrow morning, which is a little bit different than most mornings that we have been talking about. This is 2 model runs in a row that Future View is hinting at scattered showers, maybe even a low-wind thunderstorm throughout the morning hours, somewhere around 10 or 11 a.m. So if you have any plans to maybe run some errands tomorrow, don't be surprised if you are walking out the door, you catch a couple sprinkles. But also note this, the cloud cover that is going to probably stick around for most of the day. That's going to be another combining factor with some of that slightly cooler and slightly drier air. It will help keep our temperatures at bay just a touch. And then if we get rid of that morning time rain, maybe early afternoon rain, the rest of the day should be smooth sailing on Wednesday. We're trying to pick up at a couple of very light showers staying in the picture during the nighttime hours, but not really putting too much stock into that. I don't really think there's going to be much left to operate off of, considering temperatures will be substantially cooler, but the humidity will still be in play very likely, especially farther down to the south. We go into Thursday afternoon now, and it still does look like we dodge a lot of that rain. I've still elected to go on the higher end of the precipitation chances on the 7-day, but if we continue to see very good agreement, very scattered nature of whatever rain does pop up into the picture, then of course we will probably have a little bit of a downtick in those rain chances as we get to tomorrow. But the models have just been varying so drastically in between each individual run that they put out. So it's really hard to nail down an exact coverage of what we think the rain is going to do. Another story will be the winds. Throughout today, we'll see a steady breeze, but it's not going to be as gusty as what we saw yesterday. Maybe in some isolated spots if you do catch an afternoon storm, but I'm really not buying that too much. I think it's mainly going to be in the form of some light afternoon showers. It's this evening that we have the potential for gustier winds, and that's going to be at the core of some of those storms, whether it's a strong storm, whether it's a severe storm, or whether it's just your run-of-the-mill summertime thunderstorm. You could have some isolated gusty winds upwards to 20, 25, maybe even getting up to 30 or 40 miles per hour, which is starting to get where we get into special weather statement territory. That's where we'll typically see those thunderstorms just below severe criteria, but they definitely are still strong enough to pack a punch. Now we go into Wednesday afternoon. After this front does make its sweeping motion through us, some gusty winds should settle in from the north and the northeast, and occasional gusts up to 20 miles per hour could be possible, but a steady breeze is what you should expect for your Wednesday afternoon. And then the winds kind of virtually go away. They're only going to operate within an isolated storm or two if you see anything on Thursday. So this is the second severe weather risk that we do have in play for your Tuesday, a low-end level 1 out of 5 risk for seeing some strong to severe weather. This means whatever pops up in the way of a thunderstorm, and it is a strong one of those special weather statements, or it is a severe thunderstorm warning. It could have its fair share of gusty winds, typically in the 40 to 60 mile per hour range. The big thing is heavy downpours, and we'll talk more about that in just one second. But also, during the summertime months, we see frequent lightning with these storms. Once we start to get a good idea of where those clusters of lightning are, that's going to indicate where your core of heaviest rain is, even some potential hail, and where your gustiest winds are. So we'll be on the lookout for where that lightning tries to cluster together, group together, because that could indicate the core of maybe a strong or a severe thunderstorm. But this risk goes for all of central Georgia, and not only all of us here, much of the entire southern portion of the state. It's portions up to the north and the northwest of the metro Atlanta area that are not included in this level 1. And then as you go off into Alabama, even East Alabama, closer to the Auburn, Opelika areas, they're within this level 1 as well. So it's fairly widespread, and we've continued to see it get a little bit broader in terms of what areas are covered in that. But speaking of the heavy downpours, I told you we were going to touch on that. The excessive rainfall outlook is something we've actually been showing pretty frequently as of late, because it does cover the threat of some isolated flash flooding. So we are in a marginal risk, which go ahead and take that scale that we normally have for your typical severe weather risk, that level 1 through 5 that I just showed you on the graphic before this, and go ahead and translate that. We have levels 1 through 4 for your excessive rainfall outlook. We're in a level 1, which means some isolated flash flooding could occur, mainly in just those low-lying areas that don't drain well or are near some bodies of water. We can see the ponding of roadways in a select few areas. The main thing that we always tell you in this is that turn around, don't drown saying, not only because it is catchy, and not only because the National Weather Service did make a very catchy song about it, but it is very true. A lot of times those puddles of water can be deeper than they appear, and especially with a lot of rural areas in central Georgia being more so some dirt roads, they can get saturated a lot more quickly than other areas like your asphalt roads and your concrete roads. So you'll want to be on the lookout, especially in rural areas. We've actually seen our fair share of flash flooding, specifically down in our south and southeastern counties. I believe it was about 2 weeks ago down in Wheeler and Montgomery counties, where the rainfall totals were through the roof over a course of about a day or two. But be on the lookout for that. More than likely than not, you won't have to deal with anything of this, but it's specifically for those heavy downpours. So the core of a thunderstorm that I was just talking about, with the most frequent lightning, maybe even popping up a hail signature, there's a lot of moisture in the atmosphere. So it can create some very heavy rainfall totals over an isolated area, because these thunderstorms aren't going to have that quick of motion with them. They're going to kind of dump rain over the same area for a prolonged period of time. But if they do get some motion to them, wouldn't be a bad thing. It would push them out of our area far quicker. In terms of your temperatures, now let's talk some good news after all of that I just covered for really just today in the forecast. Look at that drop off. It's only 7 degrees, and I know we are still in the 90s, but this is a pretty substantial drop off for the summertime months. We are going from about 4 degrees above average forecasted today to about 3 degrees below average tomorrow. And not only that, we're going to hang around below average for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. But you will notice the steady uptick in those temperatures as we head into the weekend. This is what I forecasted off what the models say. No, I didn't just forecast this because it's a singular degree increase each and every day. But the theme is, as we head into the weekend, your temperatures will start to rebound. So make the most out of Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday while those temperatures are a little bit more bearable. Of course, the humidity is looking to stick around. Areas farther to the north and the northeast will likely have some drier air in the forecast than areas farther down to the south. But the muggy meter is not wavering. It's saying our dew point temperatures are going to hover in the 70s basically for the next week ahead, not really getting a good indication of that slightly drier air. So a select few areas may feel it. Overall, the humidity is still going to be influencing those feels like numbers. But as the actual temperatures go down, that means that the feels like numbers are also going to be a lot closer to what those values are. So speaking of which, we'll talk about what some of those feels like numbers are. Specifically for today, it's kind of the same scenario that you saw yesterday. Lots of that pink shade in the state of Georgia. Feels like numbers up to 106 in Dublin. Isolated areas are going to climb well above that threshold. Some areas are already even above that threshold before the 11 a.m. hour. Now we go into Wednesday and take a look at this. It still doesn't look too pleasant. We may see some patchy areas of pink, some patchy areas of triple digit feels like temperatures. But overall, Wednesday looks like we're going to hover somewhere in the mid to upper 90s for most of those feels like numbers, below the triple digits and below heat advisory criteria. That's the important thing. Now we go into Thursday where we see a slight uptick, still some faint areas of pink, not near as widespread as we see over here in Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas. It is going to be steaming over there on Thursday. But back here at home, we might have some areas pop up a triple digit, but still virtually in that range of mid to upper 90s and a few isolated triple digit spots. And it still will feel a lot better. But it is still going to be hot, so just because we're talking about this good news and a bit of a cool down, I don't want it to discount from the fact that it is still hot, but it's not necessarily unbearable like today, like yesterday, and like Sunday. So now let's go into the long range models, talk about some of those rain chances as we head into the end of the work week. Friday, rain chances are still looking very scattered. We may see some scattered showers pop up into the picture. Same deal with Saturday, nothing that's really too confident. And then going into Sunday, maybe no rain whatsoever. It looks like a lot of the rain is just farther up to the north and the northeast. And then we go into Monday evening, maybe some sort of weak boundary, weak frontal system trying to interact with whatever moisture we have in the forecast. We'll see if that comes to fruition. But overall, the rain chances for the extended portion of your forecast are a lot less impressive than what we are dealing with later on this evening and into tonight. And we also have to talk tropics, and I have some good news to report on that. Yesterday we were talking about this cluster right here, just to the east of the Lesser Antilles. It was a little bit farther over to the east yesterday, had 20% chance of developing over the next 48 hours and a 20% chance of developing over the course of the next week. Well, confidence has decreased and this doesn't have any chance of developing over that time period anymore. So no activity is expected in the next 7 days. And what I think happened with this is this plume of Saharan dust kind of creeped over a little bit farther west. This system moved a little bit up to the north and the northwest, started interacting with that drier air, and it really disrupted any kind of organization that it was trying to show. But this was as of the 8 a.m. update. We'll continue to monitor this day by day to see if it wants to get its act back together. But we did talk about the spaghetti plots yesterday, and it did have a direct westerly route down into the Caribbean Sea. Don't see much dust over here in the Caribbean Sea, so if the waters are warm enough, the conditions are suitable enough, this could very well move out of that plume of the dust, and it could creep over the Lesser Antilles into the Caribbean and try to reorganize. So just because the chances of development go away with a potential tropical system doesn't mean that it is dead in the water. We still have to monitor it closely because there are other portions like the Gulf, like the Caribbean Sea, the Western Atlantic, that don't have any form of that plume of Saharan dust. But it is good to see that this plume of dust goes all the way back to Western Africa, typically where we do see the formation of any tropical systems over there off West Africa. So let's talk about your 7-day forecast. It is just nice to even see any form of relief. I know it's still going to be hot, but at least it won't be unbearable. Probably still going to be some of your better weather days, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday for any outdoor activities. I still have a 40% chance of rain for each. But like I said, I went on the upper end to cover the bases, cover any of that model fluctuation. And then as we head into the weekend, I have your rain chances decreasing day by day from Friday into Saturday into Sunday. And the decrease in rain chances is going to result in a bit of a steady warm up back above average finally. Average this time of year, 94 degrees. If we get into the mid to upper 90s as we kick off next week, we very well might be welcoming back the heat advisories, but we'll cross that bridge once we get there. Let's get through all of our active weather on Tuesday today and then worry about your short-term forecast, which is Wednesday and Thursday. I know a lot of folks trying to get in those last-minute summertime plans because summer break is coming to an abrupt end, maybe as soon as next Tuesday for some folks. So make sure that you're making the most out of this last week that we have, choosing those good weather days to have any outdoor activities, but also making sure that you have a good way to beat the heat. Getting by some water or anywhere where you can kind of get an open field and have a little bit of a breeze present to feel some relief, that's going to go a long way. So I hope that all of you stay weather aware tonight. Hopefully that if we don't have anything, it is a quiet night. It's only a level 1 risk, so we have seen those not pan out before, but it's something you'll want to stay updated on. And of course, hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. It's the end of July. August is a hot month too. We're getting into probably about that halfway point of summer, so fall is in sight, but it's still a good ways away. Got to find a way to beat the heat until we get sometime in September and October and can see a cool down. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you back here at 10:30 tomorrow.